Hello, everyone. Benjamin Lindsay here, managing editor at Backstage. I'm very excited this afternoon to be going up with Chelsea Handler. I've been a fan of hers for years, of course, and she is promoting her new HBO Max comedy special, Evolution, that, of course, came out at the end of last year, and now getting some potential Emmys attention. So really just excited to have a check-in with her about the development process of that, filming in COVID, finding her creative voice, and then even rewinding to the early days of doing stand-up in LA and finding her footing in that creative space. So let me just see if she's in our audience and we can get started. Oh, there
Oh
we
my
go.
God! I made it!
You made it. You made it. Hello. You're out in the world skiing. Very
Oh,
exciting.
look what's behind us. I just had to basically slide on my ass the whole way down so I could get to my Instagram live.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I was just skiing in upstate New York a few weeks ago, but it's the only time that I got to go this year.
Where did you go?
Hunter Mountain, so just a couple hours north from the city.
Yeah,
Whereabouts
I
are you?
remember that mountain, freezing my ass off on that mountain growing up.
Yeah.
I haven't been back since.
Yeah. And whereabouts are you?
I'm in Whistler, Canada.
Amazing. Okay, so your conditions are a bit better than upstate New York. We get all the ice.
Yeah, look at this view.
Amazing.
Isn't it great?
And I'm glad you get service. You can join me for a fun Instagram Live. Perfect.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I've been looking forward to this. So I first of all been a fan of yours for years, and your new special on HBO Max, well, a few months old at this point, Evolution. It's just so great. It marks the 6-year return. Your return to stand-up, rather. What inspired getting back on stage in the first place?
Well, I wrote my last book, and I was doing a tour then, and I was kind of having people moderate conversations on stage, and I realized it was just kind of my way of sliding back in to see if I wanted to be on stage by myself rather than with a person. So I now, in retrospect, I just kind of use that as a cushion, I think, and kind of gathered my material through doing one live appearance after another. I did about 20 or 30, and by the end of that, I thought I should turn this into a stand-up show, because my dream had been to, be able to do stand-up that had some meaning instead of just telling jokes. I wanted it to have a little bit more depth. And, that scene in Steel Magnolias when Julia Roberts' character dies and Sally Field is so upset, and she's crying and she's crying and she's crying, and she's like, I just want to hit someone. And then Olympia Dukakis is like, here, hit Lisa. And everyone just starts laughing. Like, I wanted to accomplish that in the medium of stand-up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is pegged as being maybe more internal, or you're turning the lens more internal than you have in the past. Was that inspired specifically just by your memoir and kind of taking it on the road and talking about yourself in a new way?
Yeah, I guess I thought, I had made a career out of oversharing my personal experiences, and this was a personal experience that was so healing, and so I thought could help so many people, because you realize when you share your story that so many people have similar stories, and that no one's really suffering alone, but sometimes we think we are. And so for me, it was just so important. The response from the book was so meaningful to me, because people finally saw me in a new way. I wasn't just like a loudmouth bitch. Like, I actually had something to say and was vulnerable and had gone through something that I was ready to share. So it's always easy for me to share my personal stuff, and this felt important to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, once you're sharing parts of yourself, people kind of come out of the woodwork and immediately relate to it. So that's the way to do it. I'm curious, because this was kind of a new way to examine Chelsea Handler, the Chelsea Handler that we know. What has that evolution been like for you, where you went from doing the stand-up to doing Chelsea lately, and then we see in the last few years you really zeroing in your work on things that relate to social issues, and now we're doing more memoir work. Do you feel like has more substance to what you used to do?
Yeah, and I feel like, I don't want to get away with doing anything that doesn't have substance.
Yeah.
Like, I want to set an example, not only for myself, but for the people that look to me, to see how to kind of, be in this world in the way that it is right now, and all of the things that we're learning,
Hmm.
about sexism and about racism and about racial injustice and social injustice, and to be a voice that people can look to and say, okay, this is what we need to do. We all have to get on board and work together and move forward and become more clever about the jokes we're making and the stories that we're telling, instead of just, cashing a check or just being silly or funny. Those things are all good, but everything should have some more meaning to it, I feel like.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, our audience today, in addition to being fans of yours, a lot of the Backstage audience are kind of the early career actors, the comedians, the creators. So I'd like to rewind all the way to the beginning, if you don't mind playing
To
along
my
for
birth.
memory lane. Not to your birth, not to your birth. But you were 19 when you moved to LA. And I'm curious what you remember most from those early days before you started actually booking work in your early 20s, mid 20s. Like, were you doing the survival job grind? Were you doing the audition room, open mics? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, I was struggling. I was fucking surviving. I was just
Yeah.
like, oh my God. I was waiting tables and just thinking, well, oh my God, how long am I going to have to do this for? How long am I going to have to, not be successful in what I wanted to do, which I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be successful. So I had to kind of narrow in a focus. And yeah, I was auditioning. I was doing stand up. I was just trying to get, trying to hustle,
Hmm.
basically, what everybody should do when they want to get into an industry. You got to kind of pay your dues. So I was happy to do that, but there's always that thought in the back of your mind, no matter how much you believe in yourself, you think, oh my God, what if I'm doing this, forever? What if
Yeah.
I'm never going to make it? What if it never happens? So, there's always that doubt, but I think the confidence and the drive has to overshadow the doubt.
Hmm.
And so, you're hustling, and all your friends are hustling too. So you can commiserate together and you can celebrate together and you come up together. And that was what was so great about, not to skip ahead too much, but what was so great about Chelsea Lately was I was able to
Hmm.
put all those people that I came up with on a television show with me. So we were able to just hang out and succeed together,
Yeah.
which was,
Yeah.
that was the beauty of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then cut to obviously the success that you eventually were getting with things like Chelsea Lately. You also had your first book published at age 30. That's something that, at least creatively from an outsider, that seems completely separate to something like stand up or something like hitting the audition room for acting. So, what role did writing play, and writing a book like your first book play in that coming up process through the industry?
I didn't know. Well, first of all, I didn't go to college, so I didn't think I had any business writing a book about anything. And neither
Sure.
did my brother. Neither did my brothers and sisters. When I called them and I called my sister and I said, I got a book deal, she goes, a book about what? And I was like, don't worry about it. It's called My Horizontal Life, a collection of one night stands. And she's like, oh, geez. But, I was inspired by David Sedaris. I had read a bunch of his books and I had
Mhm.
seen that you could use that form, non-linear essays, and just
Mhm.
put that like short stories. And I didn't know you could write books like that. I didn't even know that was an option. So once I read his books, Barrel Fever and Naked, and all of his awesome, funny stories about his family, I'm like, oh, I can do that. I have all these stories about my family and about
Mhm.
my experiences. So I kind of just, put a bunch of stories together that I had been telling at dinner parties for like 6 months or a year. You work on a story and then it gets better and better and better and funnier. And then you add a couple details that aren't even true. And then you're like, oh, and
There you
then
go.
exactly. So then you start to embellish a couple and then you're like, wait, what is the truth of this? What is this story really? And then I just, I sent this to my manager and I said, hey, do you think I could maybe you could send this to some book people? And everybody passed. Everyone said no. It was too risque. It was too like a
Mhm.
girl talking about one night stands was too, inappropriate. But I did find one publisher and he's like, I'm going to get this book published. It's hilarious. And he did. And then it was published in like 38 countries and it was
Yeah.
my first book. And from then it was just like, oh my God, I could do this for a living.
Yeah.
And everyone in the book industry is like, no, you can't be an author for a living. You'll never survive. So it's part of my career. It's not the only part of my career,
Right.
obviously, but writing is a totally different skill set for me. And it kind of dovetails well with stand up, with my stand up, because you're writing and the two kind of bleed over into each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something that just looking at your journey, I mean, David Sedaris was an inspiration to you. You're obviously an inspiration to so many coming up today. Looking at your journey, it seems that not being fixated on one thing has been of benefit to you, that you're able to kind of have your hand in different pots. Was that a conscious thing to not narrow in on the audition room, to not narrow in on stand-up, and really be able to flex your muscles and see what works, what doesn't along the way?
Well, I have, I think a heavy case of ADD. So things get boring after a while for me. I
Yeah.
need to switch it up all the time. So having the stand up, writing the books, having the TV show, doing, those kinds of things allow me to stay interested. I get burnt out a lot because I go very hard. I went on tour for about 3 years, back to back to back, with 3 books
Mm-hmm.
while I was filming Chelsea Lately. So, of course, by the end of Chelsea Lately, I didn't even want to hear the sound of my own voice. And I certainly didn't want to get on stage and tell jokes. And I didn't want to write a book. I was like, I'm retiring. I need a break. And then, of course, you give yourself a little time off and you become re-inspired and you understand that there is an evolution to all of us. And you become interested in telling a different story in a different way. And it doesn't make someone less funny or less, serious. Any of those things. You kind of get better with age, I think. And you mature and you realize, okay, what is your motivation? What are you trying to do? Are you out for yourself or are you out to send a message?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, as a final question for you, then I'll let you get back to the slopes. Again, we're taking a walk down memory lane here. Our audience today are those early career folks. What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self when you were first getting your start? Something that you've learned along the way that might have been helpful back then?
That every piece of rejection is a road to somebody saying yes.
Yeah.
So you got to look at that as like a notch on your belt and go, okay, that's one more rejection. I'm closer to finding the person that's going to do it with me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, Chelsea, it's been great to spend some time with you. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm jealous that you're out there.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you too.
Yeah. You have a good one. Bye-bye.